In Zamboro village, they say a man's shadow is his silent twin. It follows him from birth to death. But no one ever imagined a day would come when Ted would stand in the sun. And nothing would stand with him. Ted had once been the pride of Zamboro. But now his farm looked like a graveyard. The earth was cracked. The maize leaves were brown and lifeless. The wind carried dust instead of hope. For 3 seasons, the rain had refused to fall. Inside his hut, his wife would cough endlessly. Each cough reminded him he was failing. That evening, as the sun lowered into a deep red glow, Ted stood alone in his field. "Why me?" he whispered to the empty sky. The village drums in the distance slowly faded. Then something strange happened. The wind stopped. Completely. No birds. No insects. No sound. Only the red sun, watching. Ted looked down. His shadow stretched long across the cracked soil. But he wasn't moving. And yet, the shadow shifted. Just slightly. He stepped to the left. The shadow delayed, then followed. His chest tightened. "That is not possible," he muttered. Then he heard a voice behind him. "You are tired of suffering." Ted turned sharply. A tall man stood a few steps away. He had not heard him approach. The stranger wore dark cloth that seemed to swallow the light. His face was calm. Too calm. And beneath his feet, there was no shadow. "Who are you?" Ted asked. "A helper," the stranger replied softly. Ted laughed bitterly. "Can you bring rain?" Thunder roared across the sky. Dark clouds began gathering above Ted's farm, but nowhere else. The stranger smiled faintly. "I can give you wealth. Crops. Respect in this village." Ted's heart began to race. "What do you want?" he asked carefully. The stranger pointed to the ground. "Your shadow." Ted blinked. "That is foolishness." "Is it?" the stranger said. "Your shadow sees what you do. It knows your secrets. It guards you from what walks in darkness." Lightning flashed. Inside the hut, his wife coughed again, weak, fragile. Desperation swallowed logic. "If you can save my land," Ted said, "take it." The stranger's eyes darkened. "Once I take it, it will never truly belong to you again." Ted hesitated. The clouds thickened. "Take it." The stranger stepped forward. He placed his foot gently over Ted's shadow. At that instant, Ted felt a sharp pain in his chest. Not physical. Something deeper. The ground beneath his shadow darkened like spilled ink. Slowly, the shadow peeled away from the earth. It twisted upward like smoke. Ted tried to scream but no sound came. The shadow stretched, trembled, then slipped into the stranger's hand. For a second, Ted saw it clearly. It looked like him. But its eyes were open. The stranger closed his fist. Thunder exploded. And he vanished. Rain poured down violently. Ted collapsed in the mud, shaking. When he looked down, there was nothing beside him. No dark outline. No companion. Just empty ground. By morning, Ted's farm was green. Only his farm. The rest of Zamboro remained dry. Villagers gathered in shock. "How is this possible?" they whispered. Within days, traders arrived. Money flowed. Respect returned. Ted became the richest farmer in the village. But everywhere he walked, people stared. At sunset, when every man cast a long shadow, Ted stood alone. An elder stepped back slowly. "A man without a shadow," the old man murmured, "is not fully a man." That night, Ted lay in bed, unable to sleep. The moonlight entered through the cracks of his hut. Then he heard it. Soft footsteps outside. Dragging. Slow. They circled his hut once, twice, then stopped at his door. Tate's throat went dry. "Who is there?" he whispered. Silence. Then a voice answered. His voice. "Open the door." Moonlight shifted under the wooden door. And slowly, a dark shape began to stretch inward, crawling across the floor. "Coming home." Tate did not open the door. He couldn't. His body refused to move. The dark shape beneath the door stretched slowly across the floor, thin, trembling, alive. It stopped inches from his feet. Then it rose. Not upward like a person standing, but upward like smoke forced into the shape of a man. Tate stumbled backward. The shape stood before him, flat, dark, but unmistakably human. His height, his posture, his outline. And then it stepped forward. The hut grew colder. The oil lamp flickered wildly. "Leave," Tate whispered. The shadow tilted its head, exactly the way he does when confused. Then it melted into the wall. Gone. Tate collapsed to the floor, shaking. At sunrise, Tate told himself it was a dream. Stress, guilt, imagination. He stepped outside into the early light. Villagers were already awake. Women fetching water. Children running. Men preparing for the market. Everything looked normal. Until he passed the village well. He glanced into the water. And froze. The surface reflected the sky. The trees. The women nearby. But not him. Where he stood, there was nothing. A woman screamed. She had seen it too. He has no reflection. The whispers began again. Tate stepped away quickly, heart pounding. Something was wrong. Very wrong. That afternoon, a young boy ran crying through the village. "My father is missing." The villagers gathered quickly. The missing man was last seen near Tate's farm the previous night. All eyes turned toward Tate. "I was home," he insisted. But then an old woman spoke slowly. "I saw someone walking near your barn at midnight." Tate shook his head. "That was not me." The old woman's voice trembled. "It were your shape." Silence fell. That night, Tate refused to sleep. He sat upright in the darkness, gripping a cutlass. Hours passed. Then he heard footsteps again. Outside. He rushed to the door and flung it open. Moonlight flooded the yard. And there, standing in the open field, was himself. Not flat like a shadow. Not smoke. Solid. Three-dimensional. Wearing his face. But its eyes were darker. Empty. It smiled. Not kindly. Slowly, it lifted its hand. And waved. Tate's breath caught in his throat. "I am you," the figure said calmly. "No," Tate whispered. "I am what you gave away." The double stepped backward toward the darkness of the trees. "Tonight," it said softly, "I will collect what you owe." Then it vanished into the forest. From that night on, things began to change. Villagers claimed to see Tate in places he had never been. Threatening looks. Cold stares. Silent watching. A goat was found slaughtered behind his hut. A child woke screaming, saying, "Uncle Tate was standing over my bed." Tate stopped leaving his house after sunset. But it did not matter. Because sometimes, he would blink and find himself standing somewhere else. Near the forest. Near the river. With no memory of walking there. Mud on his feet. Blood once, on his hands. He scrubbed them until his skin burned. "I did not do this," he kept repeating. But doubt began whispering inside him. What if I did? What if the shadow is not separate? What if it is becoming me? Desperate, Tate visited the oldest elder in Zamboro. The old man listened carefully, then asked one question. When you sleep, do you dream? Tate nodded slowly. What do you see? Tate swallowed. I see myself walking. Alone. No. The elder leaned forward. And who walks beside you? Tate's voice trembled. My shadow. The elder closed his eyes. You did not sell it, he said quietly. You set it free. Tate's stomach tightened. What does that mean? It means it is no longer bound to follow you. The elder's voice dropped lower. And shadows are made from the darkest parts of a man. That night, Tate locked himself inside. No lamps. No moonlight. He sat in total darkness. If you are part of me, he whispered, then face me. Silence. Then slowly. The darkness in the corner of the hut thickened. It peeled away from the wall. The double stepped forward again. Closer this time. Close enough that Tate could see its expression clearly. It was not angry. It was not evil. It was disappointed. You were weak, the shadow said. You chose comfort over wholeness. Tate shook his head. You are not me. The shadow smiled faintly. I am every selfish thought you buried. Every jealous glance. Every lie you justified. It leaned closer. And now, I no longer have to hide behind you. Tate tried to raise the cutlass, but his arms felt heavy. The shadow placed a cold hand on his chest, right over his heart. Tomorrow, it whispered, Zamboro will learn which of us deserves to exist. The oil lamp suddenly burst into flame. The hut was empty again. But outside, villagers were screaming. The screaming did not stop until sunrise. Tate burst from his hut into chaos. Villagers were running toward the square, crying, shouting, calling names. At the center of the village lay the missing man. His body was still, his chest marked with long, deep slashes. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then someone whispered, he was killed after midnight. Another voice trembled. Ask Tate where he was. All eyes turned. Tate's heart pounded violently. I was inside, he said. But then a young girl stepped forward. Her hands were shaking. I saw you, she whispered. You were standing over him. Tate staggered back. No. You were smiling, she continued. The crowd began to murmur. An elder raised his staff. Show us your feet. Confused, Tate hesitated. But they grabbed him, forced him to lift his legs. Mud clung to his soles. Fresh mud. The same dark soil near where the body was found. Tate stared at his own feet in horror. He had washed the night before. He was sure of it. I did not leave my hut, he said weakly. A man from the crowd shouted, then who walks with your face? Silence fell heavy. Because everyone had seen something. Someone who looked like Tate. Watching. Smiling. Vanishing into darkness. That afternoon, they locked him inside his own hut. Not prison. Not yet. But guarded. Until we know the truth, the elder declared. Inside, Tate sat trembling. He replayed every memory. Did he sleep? Did he leave? His mind felt fractured. Then something shifted. He blinked. And suddenly he was standing in the forest. The trees towered around him. The moon high above. His breath visible in the cold air. He looked down. The cutlass was in his hand. Its blade was wet. He dropped it in horror. No, no. A voice behind him spoke calmly. You see, He turned. The shadow stood there, solid, smiling. You wanted wealth. You never asked what I wanted. Tate clutched his head. This is not real. The shadow stepped closer. It is real to them. In the distance, he heard villagers shouting his name. Torches flickering through the trees. Then everything went black. Tate woke up back in his hut. But this time, his wrists were tied. His ankles bound. The door was open. Villagers filled the doorway. Fear in their eyes. Anger in their voices. The elder spoke slowly. We found you near the body. Tate's heart stopped. No. I was here. You were kneeling beside him, the elder continued. Holding your weapon. Tate's mind screamed. He remembered the forest. But it felt like a dream. Or was it memory? The line was disappearing. By evening, the village gathered. Tate was dragged into the square. Bound to a wooden post. The sky was dark. Heavy. Watching. Confess, someone shouted. I did not kill him. Tate yelled desperately. A woman screamed from the crowd. My son saw you outside our hut last night. Another man added, you stood in the moonlight and did not blink. The accusations poured like rain. Tate searched the crowd frantically. And then he saw it. Standing behind the villagers. Himself. Unbound. Calm. Smiling faintly. No one else seemed to notice. The shadow lifted a finger to its lips. Silence. Tate's breathing became erratic. You see, the shadow mouthed silently. They believe what they see. Tate began laughing. Not because it was funny, but because he could feel something breaking inside him. As the elder raised his staff to speak judgment, Tate felt it again. That pulling sensation. Like hands inside his chest. His vision blurred. His body felt distant. Heavy. And then, stillness. From inside his own mind, he watched helplessly as his body lifted its head. His voice spoke. But he was not speaking. Yes, his mouth said calmly. Gasps erupted. Yes. I killed him. No. Tate screamed internally. But he deserved it. His mouth continued. The villagers stepped back in fear. The eyes looking out from Tate's face were darker. Colder. Satisfied. The shadow was no longer standing behind the crowd. Because it was now standing inside him. Suddenly, the clouds above cracked with thunder. The wind roared violently through the square. Torches went out. Darkness swallowed everything. When lightning flashed, there were two Tates. One bound to the post, terrified, and one standing before the villagers. Free. Calm. Smiling. The villagers screamed. The free one turned slowly to face the bound one. You cannot cage what you released, the shadow said softly. It stepped toward him. And tonight, only one of us remains. Lightning struck the Iroko tree beside the square. Fire erupted. Chaos exploded. In the confusion, one Tate fell. One Tate ran. When the smoke cleared, only one man stood in the square, breathing heavily. Untied. Alive. But something in his eyes had changed. And no one could say with certainty which one survived. The fire from the struck Iroko tree crackled violently. Smoke twisted into the night sky. The villagers stood frozen in fear. Two Tates faced each other in the square. One trembling. Bound. Human. The other calm. Free. Eyes darker than the night itself. The shadow version tilted its head slightly. You look tired, it said softly. The bound Tate stared at it. What are you? he whispered. The shadow smiled faintly. I am what you buried. Your envy. Your pride. Your quiet hatred of those who prospered while you suffered. The villagers shifted uneasily. The shadow continued. You invited me out when you chose wealth over wholeness. Tade's breathing grew shallow. For the first time, he stopped denying it. The elder stepped forward slowly. His voice trembled, but it was firm. When a man separates from his shadow, he said, he separates from balance. He looked directly at Tade. You did not just lose protection. You lost restraint. The shadow chuckled softly. Restraint is weakness. The elder shook his head. No. Restraint is humanity. The wind began to rise. The firelight flickered violently. Tade closed his eyes. He remembered the jealousy he felt when other farmers succeeded. The silent bitterness. The whispered curses under his breath. He had fed the darkness long before the stranger arrived. The stranger had only given it freedom. The ropes binding Tade suddenly fell loose. No one had touched them. The shadow spread its arms. Come, it said. We can rule this village together. Tade stood slowly. He looked at the villagers, terrified, uncertain, wounded by his choices. Then he looked at the shadow. If I join you, he asked quietly, what becomes of them? The shadow shrugged. They will fear you. And fear is power. Tade felt something shift inside him. Power. That was what he had wanted. Respect. Control. But standing in that square, watching children hide behind their mothers, he saw what he had become. A man who traded his soul for admiration. No, he said firmly. The shadow's smile faded. You cannot defeat me. I know, Tade replied softly. The wind grew stronger. Clouds swirled above. Tade stepped forward. Not in anger. Not in fear. But in acceptance. You are right, he said. You are part of me. The shadow narrowed its eyes. I cannot destroy you, Tade continued. And I cannot outrun you. He spread his arms slowly. So I will carry you. For the first time, the shadow hesitated. What are you doing? It asked. Tade turned to the burning Iroko tree. Flames climbed high, bright and merciless. Balance requires payment, he whispered. Before anyone could stop him, Tade ran toward the fire. Ghast erupted. The shadow screamed, you will destroy us both. Tade did not stop. He grabbed a burning branch. The fire scorched his hands. He turned to face the shadow one final time. If you are my darkness, he said through tears. Then we return to dust together. The shadow lunged toward him. But Tade drove the burning branch into his own chest. The scream that followed was not entirely human. The shadow wrapped around him violently, trying to pull away. But it could not detach. Because Tade was no longer rejecting it. He was accepting it. And carrying it into destruction. The flames engulfed him. The villagers watched in horror and awe as the shadow twisted and shrieked within the fire. Then, silence. The fire collapsed inward. The wind stopped. Ash drifted gently onto the square. And where Tade once stood, there was nothing. Nobody. No shadow. Only stillness. The sky rumbled softly. Then rain began to fall. Not only on one farm, but across the entire village. The cracked earth drank deeply. Children lifted their faces toward the sky. Women wept quietly. The elder knelt in the mud. He chose to be whole, he whispered. And the village understood. Wealth taken for oneself brings imbalance. Sacrifice restores it. Weeks passed. Zamboro flourished again. But sometimes, at sunset, When the light stretches long across the fields, villagers say they see something faint near the old Iroko tree. Not a full shadow. Not a man. Just an outline. Standing upright. Still. Watching. Not with hunger. Not with anger. But with peace. And when the sun finally sets, it disappears. As if balance has finally been restored.